controlling the masses.
All right. Hello, everyone. Measured Response is back once again. Uh, let's see. I should know things at the top of my head, but I'm Jeff, aka Ysengrin, and I'm joined by Safer, as always. Say hi, Safer.
Hi, Safer.
How you doing this? Oh, it's been an interesting week. I don't know. It is a hot one here, and I've been trying to do some mixture of recovery from a leg injury, but also still get to work on time. So I've been and navigating the heat. Been doing some biking, and my daughter's sick, which has made this week interesting as well. So kind of all over the place, but it's one of those things where it's like things are going weird and wild. But
But it's
but
not
life is
permanent.
like yeah, it's and life on the whole is really great. So that's been
Good.
that's been my vibe, honestly. How about for you?
Okay. Busy, so busy. I I was at Origins, got back from Origins, was very motivated to do some like touch up dev work on distributions for Superchonk, and then working on another card game that has like an opportunity that like has a deadline that basically I made a push for this week. And I have at least 3 independent deadlines for beginning of next week before I go to Boston for the mega city. So I'm definitely not going to be practiced, and I don't know what I'm going to play runner
Yeah.
side. So
Yeah, I was going to mention that
yeah.
not this weekend, but next weekend is the Boston Mega City, the like only mega city in New England, which was definitely a little bit of a test run for this for the U.S. We can just hear people's feedback on it, especially people who didn't attend and would have attended one, say in New York or something. But that's for a future thing. But I will be there. Safer will be there. There'll be a lot of great Netrunner people there, so you should show up. This is listed as the Cambridge Megacity on Always Be Running. It's next weekend. It's being run by the fantastic Kevinth. Uh, and yeah,
I
I
need to
think
get a
that's
ticket. I don't think I've gotten a ticket yet, which is maybe a problem.
it's not going to be a major problem. The pandemonium where it's held and is held a lot of Netrunner events for a while was very strict about buying tickets in advance, and so I mean the party line is, uh, if you don't buy a ticket in advance, you may not be able to get in. So
Right.
do be good to them.
So I
Buy
should
your
probably do
tickets
that.
in advance. And it's $10, covers both days. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of fun stuff on the side day on Sunday for those of us like probably you and me that are not making day 2. So,
You never know.
well,
Yeah. It
I'd
depends
have
on
to,
how confident I think I am in the runner side.
yeah. I
Yeah.
I'd have to find a runner deck that I think is real. Which
Yeah. Yeah.
which is the funny thing where I'm like, it's a runner meta, but I'm not a good enough runner for it to use that. So,
Also, like I can't just like default crim, and that's like a big question mark. It's like I have to like legitimately learn other skills. So that's why.
yeah. Well, maybe
Yeah.
in the evenings when you're not working on your deadlines, which I think you will just be doing, you can ping me. And maybe for next week's measured response, we'll just do some replay reviews of decks that I'm considering bringing.
Well, we're also gonna do next week's thing in person, right? Because I will physically
Yes.
be in Boston. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I'll have to also figure out how to do that because right now I am doing this from the corner of my kitchen, which is not going to be the most accommodating setup for two people. So
That is a true statement. That is a true statement. It'll
well,
be fine.
yeah. I'll figure something out. We have a pretty good slate of questions today. So as we talked about last week in an episode that I actually still have yet to upload to the podcatcher, this one might even beat it out. Except I forgot to start the recording. Bummer. Um,
Start it
so
now.
start it
Start it now.
now. We're gonna start doing, I think, alternating measured response as a call-in style show and replay reviews. I think we both enjoyed them. I think last week we learned some lessons about how to maybe things to do differently. But I think
Mhm,
we'll keep doing them. And so I'll put up a
mhm.
thread for episode 17 that'll be for replay reviews, and then episode 18, which will be back to a standard measure response. Maybe at some point we will split them out into separate episode numbers because they're sort of different shows to some degree. Um,
Yeah. All right.
but yeah,
So, first question. You ready for it?
yeah,
It's from Josie. Uh, Josie says, Ateo works better mechanically as an HBID. Campaigns are happy to chill in a second server and then neatly remove themselves. Flop becomes strictly better than Sure Gamble at two servers. It's a slant rhyme. Yeah, rhyme,
yeah.
rhyme of Asa in terms of effect, and Vovo works better for it better than Adrian. I think that you're probably one of the biggest like Asa enjoyers that I know. What's your take on this?
You know, I to me, Atea, like I think mechanically, like I see where Josie is coming from. Like mechanically, like the campaigns do fit better, um, as like Jinteki thing or as HB cards in Jinteki. But I guess to me, um, two remote has never felt like the playstyle for HB. Whereas I feel like there actually have been Jinteki patterns that kind of fit that a little bit more. I think of like, I mean, this is a little bit of a callback to replicating perfection, which is like for was a Jinteki ID that often, I mean, it would often have more than two remotes, but it wouldn't have the way that like a lot of asset decks these days are like five or six remotes. Like it was often three, maybe four remote servers, and like two of them would be iced and like things would be happening in them. So I think to me that's why Atea still kind of feels Jinteki-y, more Jinteki-y to me, um, rather than HB. Um,
Yeah,
so
I it's like the key thing here is that Josie is saying Ateo works better mechanically as an HB identity, and I'm like, huh, yeah, I think I kind of maybe agree under the strict premise of like, Vovo is like pretty good in Atea, I think, or like feels very appropriate for Atea. You do in fact have like the campaign style effects that I think are also good. Um, I think that Atea is just demanding a lot of players and doesn't really give enough in return. So I know that there's some like diehard like Atea kind of enjoyers that have tried to like push it. And I don't think that if you color swapped Atea to HB, it would all of a sudden be like playable, like or like more playable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because I
I
think it's
mean,
plenty playable.
I
It's not
think
like
mechanically it might be stronger. It is having to fight the uphill battle of like making two highly iced servers that then get valuable things in them means that like both the runner is going to be able like gets to pick which one that gets to interact with whichever one's less expensive for them relative to the amount of value that's in it. And so if you actually have two load bearing pieces, you basically just have one weak load bearing piece, right? So it is a tricky design problem to square.
yeah, it's a
I
very tricky one.
um I do think like also to me the install here and something happens somewhere else feels more Jinteki to me flavor wise, whereas Asa is like, I do this
Mhm.
thing here and then I get to do even more here. Feels HB, um, which, you know, that's not a hard and fast rule. Like there's classic HP cards that will let you do things in multiple places. Um, but I feel like the like here, but not like the forcing you to go to two different places actually makes the card feel very Jinteki to me, despite that being like a pretty thin layer of the card.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, part of Jinteki's color pie is just being fucking weird, and Ate is kind of fucking weird. Whereas this Asa is like incredibly streamlined. Um, is that a good dynamic? Well, up for you to decide. um,
Yeah. I mean, to some
uh,
extent, Asa is like, here's a way to gain a click, and like Ate is like, here's a way to gain a click and some extra, but kind of thing, right? And Asa basically doesn't have a but; it just says do the thing.
yeah. Unless you have anything else to say, I think we can move on to Groblin's question.
Yeah.
So Groblin says something interesting about factions that I think happens often is influence tax. That happens when a faction needs to fix a hole. It ends up with 12 influence. Most of these decks being on the same thing. I'm assuming you're referring to Spin Doctor here. Cream decks all importing Nukas and Twinnings. Oh, ends up with 12 influence. In other words, like 12 influences eaten up. Got it. The most frustrating form of this happens when the best cards for a faction for a given ID are not in faction. Transfer for Seb, Deep Dive for Sable, Mess with Chesvo for BTL. This particularly struck me building editorial division and looking at Luana as one of the most important cards of the deck. I don't like it when the centerpieces of an archetype isn't in the faction of the idea that it's from. Is this something that's happening now with the flood of the market too? I prefer influence being spent. So what do you think on, I guess, maybe mandatory influence spends or really strong influence spends out of faction?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because to me, that has just kind of always been part of the game. And to some extent, is like, I don't think it's, to me, I'm like, oh, in theory, it's like a balancing mechanism. Um, and like, that's one way to do it. You know, I think it's, what's the, it feels, I guess it, I get why it bugs people. I think for me, it just feels like a sort of inevitability of a system that tries to make a hard line. Because humans being humans, as soon as we make a hard rule, we say, oh, how interesting could it be if I broke the rule a little bit? And so you want to make a shaper card that works really well with an anarch like card, or however, whatever permutation of that you want. And so having a best card, I guess I'm answering the opposite of what you asked as I'm talking, but we'll start here and we can jump back the other way. Um, of like, I think these like best cards out of faction, like sometimes that actually is the like origin point, and sometimes it's like it's kind of interest. It can be fun to be. Can we take this card out of one context and put it in a different context? And that's like a rule breaking that's fun and part of why we like play games, I guess.
Yeah, I think at the core of this, the question is like, what is the purpose of the influence system, and what should influence be used for? Should it be used for, you know, getting things that your faction is not particularly good at and expressing different faction? One moment, I need to sneeze. Sorry. Should it
Yeah.
be used for filling, holes within the faction? Because that essentially means that factions have like innate strengths and weaknesses and maybe have slightly better like identities. Should it be used for importing like win conditions or unique outputs or specific combinations of cards, which means which means you can do things that you couldn't do like any other place? I think that influence system probably means a different thing to a lot of different people, and people interact with it differently. I just think that it makes for really interesting deck building puzzles. And when we're talking about, I think in this context, it's like, so the Crim example is Crim imports Nukas and Twinnings. That is, hey, I have a decent amount of credit economy. and just general pressure. And the things that are most valuable to me are draw economy, aka Nuka, and a very efficient win condition, aka twinning, that already happens to work with my deck. And really, what I think like the underlying thing here is the frustration around it is like I don't have enough options. I don't see enough variety in my game, right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's what like the influence system promises, but doesn't also always like deliver on. So I'm pretty in favor of like generally lowering influences across the board because I think it allows for more stuff like this. Like I think that the game's probably not better with like Nuka at one influence, for example, because it is very potent. But like I do like the idea of identities having more influence to kind of pick and choose what they want and like flex into different things. That being
Yeah.
said,
Oh.
transfer for Seb, I think that that's its own archetype, and it almost even becomes interesting when you go like, this is such a heavy investment. Yes, this so clearly works. What makes it worthwhile to go from 3 transfer to 2 transfer?
Yeah, and I think that can be one of those interesting things about those like this is really a card that you almost always like you kind of always want to play, and then doing that calculation of okay, but is the third copy worth all of these payoffs or all these costs of not including these other things? Is the second, doing that calculation can make the deck building challenge really interesting, even if it does like homogenize a little bit more because you're like, okay, well this card is so like every Arasana deck is going to run Physarum because it's basically a card printed for Arasana, but like you can not run it in certain metas, or maybe you decide, oh, it's actually a meta where I really want two of them, and I'm going to put a bunch of investment in that. And like, with cards that are like designed in the same set like that, there's clearly some level of like, let's try and make these things balance each other where the cost of putting this in the deck is worth it, but it's not free at the same time. Um,
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on this is that like I just don't believe in like having like an influence tax on things, i.e., like the Fizzarum example that you said. It's not, hey, this would be too good in Ari, so instead of making it green, let's make it blue. Like that's not how we do things, right?
yeah,
It was always a blue card. It was what would a conceptually right in hand with what Ari's game plan is. So it makes sense that Ari wants to import that. Did we increase its influence from 2 to 3 in the last like 2 weeks because specifically we thought it would be too good an RE if we didn't? Yes, we did.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, yeah, I, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also to go back to your other point of like, I think one of the things about lowering influence, like, yeah, you probably don't want it on smoothing cards that are as strong as Dr. Nuka, but we've talked a lot about like having ice options that were lower influence. Like that is a form of smoothing for the corpse, and it allows people to make more tech choices because their influence would be less like they would have more room to play with and make choices from a bigger part of the card pool. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So SSJ Speed Racer is bringing back the burner conversation. They said that they're a little surprised to hear us push back so hard on the idea that burner is a crim coded card, stating it definitely has some shapery elements as well, but fundamentally it's a card that focuses on breaking into HQ, disrupting it, and that screams criminal to me. I don't even really say that as a knock. I think it's okay for factions to occasionally borrow from other factions, but Burger does feel like a very obvious example of that. I think to the extent that folks get a little frustrated with it, it comes down to the sense that right now criminals have to import cards that attack R&D, but Schaefer's can comfortably attack HQ without spending influence. There was a lot of back and forth on burner versus transfer, but the more salient comparison to me is burner versus wake. Burner isn't the single best HQ run event, but it is powerful, effective, and is much better at doing what it does than wake at doing what wake does. I'm happy to take this one first if you want.
Yeah. I want to go on a tangent about Wake. I guess my
I mean,
immediate first
yeah,
thought is
go, no,
comparing
go.
Wake to Burner is such a I don't think that it is a comparison in that one card feels pretty weak and the other card feels pretty strong. So I agree with that point about the like it feels like shapers have access to a better HQ card uh, than criminals have access to an R&D card. But like and you know to SJ Racer's like point, like he said this of like, yeah, it's okay for factions to borrow, and it's more that criminals are a little salty about getting bad cards. And I agree that it sucks that criminal has not had some really punchy cards at the level that Burner was. I think, um, but I think I still kind of disagree that it feels like a crim card or that it's like super crim coded. Just because making the each faction say, oh, this faction can only interact with server X. I don't know. It's just not been a definition that I think has been the operative mode for how I think about factions for a while.
Yeah. So like the breaking into HQ and disrupting it, screaming criminal, is like, okay, so then why is Eye to Eye not a criminal card? Like you should have faction lines be, not can they get into HQ and disrupt it? It should be how do they get into HQ, and when they do, how do they disrupt it? And that is definitely the primary reason for me why Burner, it feels very much, I mean, I shouldn't even say feels. It is very much in line with my design philosophies around what I think Shapers should be doing to like what HQ disruption in Shaper should look like. I think a card like Tailgate, right, is correctly crim coded. And I think that represents a different kind of output than Burner. Burner being slightly more, I guess, consistent in applying pressure. Like sometimes you access a whole bunch of cards from HQ and you go, I don't actually need to like steal these cards. I just need to disrupt you. That's the part that screams Shaper to me. Whereas Criminal is like, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna touch all the cards, I want to be aggressive, and I need to actually take risks. I can't just safely touch a bite and not be worried about it. Talking a little bit more about the weight comparison, I don't think I fully understand the Burner to Wake comparison, and just that like Wake is a card that also cares about running HQ, but like Wake is quite literally the what would criminal R&D multi-access look like, you know?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
like that's where I'm
That's where
like
I mean,
it
like
feels like
you can look at Wake and be like, okay, if I erased Wake from my memory and drew up a card that said criminals need R&D access, right? You end up with a card that basically looks like Wake. I think the biggest, or at least like a consistent complaint I have, is that Wake is so much like it came out in the same set as
better.
Twitting, and its power level is
Yeah.
just so noticeably worse. And I think that's the thing, that would be the thing I would love to go back and fix because Wake does feel very crim on R&D or like how to get R&D multi-access. It's just it's too soft. It assumes that HQ is way more accessible than I think it is in practice.
Well, maybe that's why it actually feels like a Crim card, because criminal, like, look, I think that Wake is probably at its best outside of Criminal, just how like Tailgate is at its best outside of Criminal. And it's just when you over index on a single server and the corporations know that you just need to get into that one server, it's not a good game plan. Like when you play against Pudma and you just go, yeah, I'm going to put my spikiest ice on top of R&D, and you've built your entire deck and game plan around getting into a single server and getting around R&D, that doesn't actually, it's just not particularly strong runner game plan. There's other better things you can do. So like this is part of the dynamic for why a burner in Shaper is potent in Shaper, because it allows them to have a more diverse game plan. And like one of the failures of Wake in Criminal, like in Criminal's competitive usage of it, is that it still requires HQ runs to pressure the other server. So like Wake in recent history, in my mind, has had the most success in Ari.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
I think that the other thing is that like criminals just struggle to take a random damage
Yeah.
from their hand size, and both of the other factions are much better at that. So yeah, I actually
Yeah.
do think you would see a lot more Wake to complement twinning in other factions if it wasn't 3 influence. Like if Wake is
Yeah.
1
Yeah.
influence, I think you're seeing it as a 1 of in every single Anarch deck.
Yeah. Wake is a card that I have a lot of feelings about, because like I was definitely in playtest advocating for it. I was like, this is the play pattern we want more than twinning. So like let's like crank up the power level on it. But for not, we ended up in a different world, and I don't even know that I would be. Maybe we would be. It's hard to know what that other world looks like if Wake is better. Like, does that actually make the game better? I don't know that that's actually true, right? Um, and I do think, the other point that I think is really interesting that you made is that like, because Criminal is so indexed on HQ success, like it's almost, it's like a level of flanderization that makes it difficult to then make interesting payoffs.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so like, I think a reasonable point for this is like, okay, well, Shaper's burner does not say, oh, you then now have to go run R&D, except it kind of secretly does, right?
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see Crim get more off HQ effects, but I'm like, well, they also got clean. I don't know. There's a lot. Like, I think Crim could use some spice that hasn't gotten the last couple of sets, but I don't know that I'm like super down in the Crim as
Crim
a
did get
faction.
like archives to HQ kind of things to help support this in recent
that's true
sets.
too.
Yeah, I think it's just like Crim's card pool isn't actually super deep at the moment. Crim's card pool and its power level is like very much held up in Borealis, where the design methodology and direction was Crim is the centrals matter faction, rather than a particular central matters, and like so that's kind of what we're seeing at the moment. But I think that it'll change over time, which will be good. Next question.
Yeah.
Cool. Lost Traveler asks, I feel like Ash's companions are rather out of character with Anarch. That's not to say I dislike the companions. I love my little Rozekis, and I do feel like there are some interesting design considerations around each one of them having their specific little credits and stuff on it. But on a fundamental level, very consistent, slow, smooth drip economy, feels out of line with Anarch. Yeah. Usually they would have to invest some sort of like clicks or other meaningful trade-off or sacrifice, like liberated accounts or day job. This is just like a big old fat. Yep, agree.
Yep. I agree. I can't wait for Ashes to rotate. I do think Anarch's gonna have like a well, now what problem, because it's, I don't know, it's been hard to print Anarch economy cards because it's just like, okay, well, is this just way overrate when you can install it for nothing with Paladin, or install it for play it as an event for nothing with Mystic? Yes, it is. Okay, well, let's not print that right now.
Paladin is 110% a Shaper card. There's no universe where that is not a Shaper card. Mystic, that is a Crim card. You're not convinced me that's not a Crim card. Taka, that's a Shaper card. It's 110% a Shaper card. Fencer is the one Anarch card out of all of them.
Yeah, and it's also like the downside is so soft. It's like if it was like, I wonder what the world looks like where like they get angry if they have any credits on them, kind of thing. Like they're probably start to be aggressively bad at that point, but it's like now they feel different, and like you'd have to probably one credit is too many, but like
look, those cards do not, they have way too much text on them. They're just a little bit, they're they are something that I think that we, including the people that worked on them, can look back on and take like lessons and say like, okay, we were figuring some stuff out, like about like what makes sense to design, like how to design cards and stuff. And we can see like that the design got a lot better, like, you know,
Yeah.
the next cycle. But like we would not be printing things that look like companions in the whole like complexity and how much text they have and the meaningfulness of that text and all that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the ratios are just way off.
Yeah, it is interesting about like they are effectively Riseki, which is a one sentence, like 5 word thing, right? But they instead have 2 paragraphs of text. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, as the there's I think there's some trade offs, and we're gonna talk. I think someone else had asked a question about do one thing, and they definitely. I mean, I actually don't know that they're super well. They do fall a bit afoul of do one thing, but not the most egregiously, I think. Um,
All right. So that we don't have to keep cold lava waiting too much longer.
yeah,
I think we going to go into Meteor's question.
yeah.
Which is 2 parts. I'm going to start with the one that we're going to talk about first, though, which is the cards do 2 things. Um, how did cards do 2 things card design come about? Especially in Liberation, we saw cards like Hannah Wheels, Crew, Cohort as big offenders of cards do 2 things and be extremely strong due to it. Question is just how did it came about? Um, how did cards do 2 things come about as a card design? I mean, I think of this as like kind of the opposite, where it's like, how did cards do one thing come about? Which I think is credit to Tuno and also AMs for joining the dev team and, you know, echoing like the general sentiment that some people in the community have of like cards becoming too complicated. Liberation as like a cycle was just had a lot of different stuff going on. It tried a lot of experimental things in playtesting on the corp side, and then paring those like complicated things down made things feel simpler than like what previously was. But when you just look at the cards objectively themselves, they had a lot of things. I think the other thing is like some of these are like RWR cards. RWR is my first Netrunner design set, and like when I came in as a when I came in, like my philosophy was card games are all about card interactions and cards doing things. And like when you have, Netrunner is a very complex card game, and Netrunner players can handle, 2 clauses on cards that interrelate. And that allows you to have more things, like more kind of card effects lock into other effects. And that will make for like more interesting like gameplay and interdynamics. And, I think that Hannah, Crew, Cohort are like called out as offenders here. And in my opinion, it's like they're pretty reasonable ones. Like I think that they're on the upper end of like what is acceptable, but like they cohesively make sense as a card. And they do that whole like tying into other things, like the other like keys and pieces of the game and other card effects in a positive way. But then you look at other cards in the Liberation cycle and you go, it didn't need this much text. It didn't need to do this other thing as well. Like this could have just been a more streamlined, straightforward card and still accomplish the same goals.
Yeah, like, do you remember that Thunderbolt does 2 things to every piece of ice that get res? Like, there's a lot of, yeah, to me, those are the cards, like, those are the cards that see play, but I'm like, there's so many cards in this set that have
Yeah.
2+ functions. How many of them, like, actually justify that function?
Yeah.
And it's
Honestly, I
just,
think I wasn't here for it, but like revisiting the politicals and having those be if your ice is rezzed, one effect. If it's iced, one effect. If it's
effect,
uniced,
just
another effect.
add an additional effect. Yeah.
Yeah, like at its core, that concept kind of set up the set to have this whole dynamic of like
Yeah.
cards have very clearly 2 clauses.
Yeah, I also like to your point about like we were removing text, and so even though there was too much text, it felt like we had done a lot of work. Like the first version of playtest that we got, like literally Jinteki had a keyword mechanic that requires you to have a whole separate card that had 4 pieces, like had like a thing that you tracked and would like count up, and like it basically, there was sort of like, okay, you now have to bring this game piece with you to every single corp game because it's on some cards that can be splashed, and like there was just a level of like every corp had a keyword, kind of like every runner had a keyword in Borealis, and they were a
Yeah.
lot. And so,
Yeah.
I think there's we're gonna talk. It's we're gonna talk about it in a moment with the other half of this question. But like, dev is a hard process, and it is it's very contingent on what came before, which is stuff that people don't see, and it's very difficult to get someone to like, when the community sees it for the first time, like everyone pretty much in playtest has been staring at a version of a card for at least a year, and has a lot of baggage they're carrying with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to like overcome that baggage. It usually takes like many, many months of a card changing in like in a different way. And one of the things we actually started doing is that when a card function changes a lot, we change the name. And that I think has actually had a really positive impact on this dynamic, but we didn't always do that.
Yeah. There was a
So
long period
yeah.
where, like, oh, what is this card's name? Like tracking through the many versions of the card that didn't work, like anchored your assessment.
Yeah. So Meether also asked, we know we both said that Rotary wasn't on us, but I just gotta know what happened with it if you know the story. And the answer is I do know the story. And also like I just gotta call out it's not like about who it's on or ownership or someone made a mistake or not. It's just a matter of like game design is hard and the I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is like sometimes cards slip through the cracks or get missed in some way, shape, or form, or they don't turn out the way that we want them to turn out. And a lot of times the answer is going to be a lot less sexy than what people want, which is just game development is hard. It's important for us to hit timelines so people have cards and tracking however many cards is in VP. VP was like a slightly above the standard set size, right?
It was
Or
66
no, it wasn't.
cards.
It was
Yeah,
66. It
it's
was 66
66.
cards.
It's the standard, but
Yeah, so 66 was the standard. Elevation was the unstandard one that was more than that. But,
yeah,
um, Vantage Point was designed and play tested and finalized in what 6 months time, right? Am
yeah,
I
it was
correct?
something.
It was
Yeah,
designed
because
in 2 months, play tested in
yeah,
4 months.
yeah, it was because it
Yeah,
was released within a year of being pitched, which is like
correct.
a wild amount. Like, yeah,
I will take
Sh-
responsibility for that one.
no, that yeah, I think like there's a part of it where it's like, it's there's downsides to that happening, and like I think Rotary is an example of that, where it's like, yeah, if we'd had another month, would Rotary have come out better? Yes, but at
Yeah,
the same time,
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
it's like, well, uh, I think we'll see the payoff of VP. I don't know. I think there's a lot of like production pipeline stuff that was like a huge upgrade in VP, and like, yeah, not every card delivered, and there's never going to be a set where every card delivers. Um,
Yeah, and we're not gonna do 4 months for a playtesting set, like hopefully ever again. We don't need to because Vantage Point was building back the lead time in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
um so yeah,
yeah, it's
the end.
it's not, yeah, it's not a sexy story. The card just went through a lot of versions, and there was a lot of different things needed to get right at the end in a pretty compressed timeline. That's about as exciting as it
Yep.
gets.
I do have one other thought, which is like also the difference in cost changes a card a lot. So like imagine if Hermes cost 3 instead of 2. The card looks probably different. There's a time period where Sankasil cost 2 instead of 3 on install cost, and Sankasil into Clean Getaway, click 1 was a common thing to do. Or like
Mm-hmm.
what was the other one? There's the console. No, I think it was Clean Getaway cost 2. I don't remember exactly. I think it was Clean Getaway cost 2 for a little while. So it was
Yeah.
like the console Dente cost 3, and because you could go Dente Clean Getaway into an open HQ turn 1, Dente felt super oppressive. It also had
Yeah.
some other
De-
like aspects to it at
yeah,
the time, but
Detente had like some really
the
oppressive
taunt.
text at some point.
Oh
Um,
no. Oh no.
I hadn't even realized that you
Oh
until I went to
no.
actually say the word, and I was like, "Wait, Safer's been saying something else, hasn't he?"
Yep. Let's just not. Okay, next question. Cold
No,
lava,
great.
come on in.
Now I know the title for the episode. This is much better than what I had
Oh
written up. So,
no. Is it oh no?
sorry. I know Cold Lava is like about to be on the phone. But I very quick kid story. My daughter this week suddenly figured out she knows how to say high five and spent the entire evening saying high five and tapping every single face she saw in a book we were reading, and it was just very
That's
cute.
incredibly cute. That's so cute.
Cool. Let's get Cold Lava on for his question. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Awesome. All right, Cold Lava. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Uh, good, good. How are you
Good.
doing?
Good. Can you hear
Surviving
me
the
well?
heat? Yeah, yeah.
uh, um, yeah, I guess.
You can hit us with your claim. I mean, actually, I guess you should probably introduce yourself. I think most people probably know who
Yeah.
you are, but it doesn't hurt.
Maybe. I'm Cold Lava. I play in the greater Boston area. Play a lot of Anarch and Shaper, and then a lot of Wayland on the Corp side.
You mean a lot of ob on the corpse side?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
um. Anyway, so I guess I formatted this question as like a claim and to see if the two hosts agree, and the general claim is power in the game, at least compared to I guess a long time ago, hasn't equally power crept, but it has power shifted. We've kind of lost a lot of the really strong win cons like Sea Scorch, Public Trail Scorch, and like HHN, and we've kind of gotten these toned down, more fair versions. But on the econ side, it feels like the econ has been power crept a lot up. Like we've gone from cards like what was the Jinteki one where you had to reveal cards in your hand?
A celebrity gift.
Yeah, celebrity gift into like Charlotte and cohort. So it feels like a lot of the power budget of the game, if that is a thing, has moved into the econ, and that's kind of forced the game into this high-paced game. And I guess so. I guess the three questions I have is to start with is, do you agree with that kind of overall analysis?
Yeah. It's interesting. I read the question, I was like, oh yeah, of course. And then I stopped and I'm like, I think I want to be like, I think it's, anytime you have the thing where you're like, oh yeah, of course I agree with this, I feel like it's always worth doing the like step back, be like, is this really right? Because there's a part of me that wonder, it's like, oh, if I go back and look at the peak sea source scorch metas, like at the same time people were like making weird economy choices, like running one copy of Daily Casts while running two copies of Katie Jones and stuff, right? Like my perennial
Yeah,
bugbear. And so there's some amount of like, I think we've learned how, like, some of it is we are actually just placing more emphasis on the economy side of the game. Um,
as
but
players,
as players, and so like the net, it's like, I guess it's like, even as I say that, I'm a little bit struggling to believe that myself, because I'm like, oh, Nico campaign is basically a strictly better Adonis campaign. Um, it's like, oh, I could make the argument with Charlotte, like either it's a 2 card combo or its payout is actually not that different from a lot of the other campaigns, kind of thing. And there's a little bit more of that, I feel like, in the NSG design of like, okay, if you get these 2 cards together, they're gonna like they any 2 cards together have to outcompete a Sure Gamble hedge fund, I don't know that that's always was the like case in card design in the like more FFG dominated economy design era. But that's like
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess you could.
I think like I think I mostly agree with like I think I pretty much am in the same boat as Jeff here, where I look at this and I go, or I hear the statement and I'm like, yep, all of these things seem true. And I think intuition, I go, this feels like it makes sense. And then there's like this little like thing in the back of my head that's like, but how do I validate this? Like, how do I actually know that this is true or not? And the player things matter, but also I'm thinking of like, well, one, like humans are notoriously bad at like, you know, having clear,
Remembering.
yeah, unbiased memories.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of like commercial bankers group, like,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
like, like I think it was like okay, 2014, 2015, and then maybe early 2016, or like halfway through 2016, where I'm like, yeah, this feels accurate to me, and then I'm like, okay, but then Rashida happened and NGO was there, and I'm like, in a lot of ways, like I think that some of the like I think that we can kind of cherry pick different examples from FFG and NSG where one side has like a design philosophy that's like maybe a little bit above rate or above curve here. But if we look at like the overall arch, it's like overall, yeah, like the overall arc.
arc probably.
Yeah, arc.
Just drop the
My word,
H.
not great today. Yeah. Um, the overall arc is like, I think a general, uh, it seems like a trend that is happened and started a very long time ago in the game,
Yeah,
but maybe it like the wave of us understanding and feeling it has not like is now finally catching up.
I think also like there's
yeah,
an
and
element of because like as fans of the game making the game, we're like very tuned into how important economy feels, and so if we're going to make an economy card, we want to make it have a slot, where I don't think that was necessarily. I mean, like yeah, in later FFG era, like yeah, Rashida and Geo, like they had a lot of stuff priced to move, um, but I think it's like I don't know. There's some amount of like because we are making the game and when we put out a card, we're like, oh, we want to make this impact. So like the economy feels that more. Whereas like it's easier to look at a win con that's a little bit undertuned and be like, this will still have an impact even if it's undertuned. Whereas if you look at an econ card that's undertuned, it often is very easy to say, yeah, I'd never consider this over other option, and that might lead. I think that to me is like the intuitive case that I could make for like why we might be seeing like a slow economy power creep over time, uh, and like does align with your claim.
yeah, and I agree. I don't think it's just an NSG thing. I think it was just a general power creep. Like you mentioned, Rashida. There's also like Miss Bones, which came to mind after I wrote this question, which is just insane.
Yeah.
But
Oh my god!
another reason I've been another reason I feel like we're feeling it a bit is just because I think NSG kind of took the initiative to try and power parts of the game. Like there was like the ice thaw theory, and it might not have been. It might have felt right at first, and then we still have all these really powerful econ cards around, and all of a sudden it just feels a little out of balance in that way.
Yeah. I think like there are these like really large. I guess it's like trying to steer a ship, right?
Yeah.
You have to kind of plan your entire course out, and like an incorrect calculation like now 2 hours out is going to drastically change where you end up, right?
Yep.
I think that's kind of like I think some of the things we have done well on would be like reducing trash costs and like sticking to that. And like I know that we're currently experiencing a lot of forecast things, but like those are just all stuff that's still in the game, and we're probably going to get to a place where we continue to feel the reduction in trash costs in a positive way. I think that we also are doing some powering down of economy in general. Like, it was purposeful that we didn't do something like Rashida, and we made things a little bit more conditional. So like Antil, I think, is a very good card, but
Yep.
it has clear like strengths and weaknesses. Humanoid Resources is like a card that people, it just took a really long time to figure out and how to optimize, and has a lot of restrictions on it. But then you have cards like Rent Rioters, where it's like Rent Rioters, people are really considering playing that card, and we printed it to be slightly slower. And like, okay, maybe Rent Rioters should have caught like netted 1 additional credit on it. But usually like 1 credit difference is what makes economy cards. Like
Yeah.
we've seen this like happen all the time, and like
Yeah, I mean, I would
yeah, we've
also say,
just seen this happen all the time.
one thing that like is of note right now is a lot of runner side econ is ashes at the moment. Like,
Yep.
Yep.
the companions and daily casts are like slam going every, like basically every deck is running some number of them, unless they have a very particular engine. And like, if you look at like Vantage Point, like there's actually like, okay, I'm doing a quick scan. Stowaway says gain credits. I guess Touchstone says gain credits.
We
I guess
purposely didn't print economy and Vantage
Yeah,
Point.
it's
for
like
economy.
Shaper
Like, that was
gets
very
some
intentional.
stealth credit generating cards, and then Sellout, I guess, is also an econ card, and that's basically the end of the list, right?
Yep.
So
Tungsten.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
But
well,
But
when look, sometimes imagine what tungsten. Never mind.
yeah,
Not a helpful comment. Not a helpful comment.
In terms of like the econ power creep contributing to variance, because I go back and forth on this a lot. Because like some part of me just feels like variance feeling is to me, like the highest variance thing in the game right now is like, how long does it take me to draw my first corp card that draws me cards efficiently? And then like um the lack, like that has been the thing that feel, and like maybe that's an econ thing, and maybe that's like there could be a world where the underlying symptom there is like, oh, the window before runners get to their end game flat board state is too narrow, and that's the like over econ contributing to the variance. But I kind of feel like I think you could have a high resource game that is that is low, yeah, lower variance than what we have right now. I feel like the variance is it has larger contributions than the like snowball effect to some degree, but I could definitely be persuaded to
Yeah,
view that a different
I
way.
wrote down in my I like keep notes of like what I want to say. And one of the notes that I wrote down like much earlier was like, yeah, we're talking about like specifically like credit economy, but one of the very key things that like I keep an eye out for, and like I'm really scared of, because I think that there has just been way too much of it, including in NSG's printing, is like draw, like just consistent draw, and like the velocity at which mostly runners draw their deck is like something that I keep a really close eye on, and I'm really really kind of scared of. Whenever a runner can by turn 4 or 5 have seen like gets to like 22 cards in deck, I'm like, you have literally seen half of your deck by like turn 4 or 5. You are almost assuredly going to be able to excuse me, get to a place where most of the corpse problems that they're trying to like, most of the corpse like puzzle is probably going to be unlocked for a runner that's going that deep. And so I think like it's this weird thing where, okay, that's actually a reduction in variance, but it doesn't
That then,
necessarily feel good,
yeah,
because you're constantly hitting the same game states, like game over game, and that actually usually has really negative effects for card games.
I would say it can also
well,
make the corp play feel higher variance because you're like, oh,
yeah.
my opponent hit the top deck. They hit two Nukas off of each other, and so I just don't get to play a game, right? Or the other one that I think feels quite bad is, oh, my opponent, the runner drew a pinhole in their opening hand, so I didn't get my turn 1 anthill or my turn 1 HR.
Yeah.
But I think it's like because I think you're right to point out, like, because the draw is so strong, particularly on the runner side right now, like you feel that. I feel like that. I almost feel like there's like almost two things of like the snowball. Like the game does snowball quite hard. I don't know that I would tie that snowballing to, like, that's the like variance contributor, I guess. Maybe it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I do consider card drop kind of part of the econ, and like a lot of the good corp econ right now is also card draw with like Charlotte, cohort, flop, like they all do both at very high rates. But yeah, kind of to what Jeff was saying, rivers being low variance kind of makes the corp feel high variance, because if you didn't get that, if you didn't get your HR, if you didn't get your anthill, well, the runner's set up now, so the game's kind of cooked. So it feels a bit like,
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the corp, you feel like the game is going to be die rolled on what the first couple of cards in the runner deck are. Like you have a couple of turns, you have maybe 2 or 3 turns to make a window big enough to get the potential to win, and then you're just going to get like steamrolled. And I think like that's probably the best case to me to make of like the runner econ in particular, the draw econ for runner side is contributing to making the corp game feel very high variance.
Right.
But
and I'm gonna beat my old drum, which is why did Borealis cycle and previous cycles need all of this draw for the runner? Why did Hoshiko need to exist and make it so that you could draw through your deck really consistently? Well, you had to find a way to answer Rishida's like tempo.
Yep.
Yeah.
You had to be able.
I mean,
you had to have a game that you could play into Rashida, into turn 2 Rashida, turn 3, like turn 2 Rashida fire, turn 3 Rashida fire. You couldn't just have that be an auto scoop for the runner. So you then had to print runner draw that could deal with the fact that the corp had seen an additional 6 cards, right, and had extra credits in there too. Like, yeah.
Something about I just lost it. The topic from like 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm just design philosophy, not a believer in printing incredibly like overpowered and concentrated power into some things to try to solve a systems problem.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing we haven't talked about is like making Sea Source Scorch being much more powerful than Public Trail End the Line. Like, it is easy for us right now to look at Public Trail End the Line like just not being a thing that's viable and going, oh man, it was so nice. But as someone who was a mid to low skill player, when Sea Source Scorch was like one of the things that you did, it was so frustrating because if you were trying to build a fun, kooky deck, you would just lose to it because it was like, oh, I'm trying to do my fun engine thing, and then I made a run because that's what Netrunner is, and then I lose. And and maybe the other really infuriating thing is like, if you played the best decks of that era, you were never going to get Sea Source Scorch pretty much. Like, even without installing the Plastery, you could just outplay the corp and it didn't actually become a problem. So it was this very weird skill curve where it made like the online discourse, it is like hard to think back. Like, that card was so central to so many conversations back then in a way that like feels quaint and like disproportionate to how good the card was. And so I don't know, to me, that like that the win conditions need to be like that stronger win cons and weaker econ like is the answer to me. I do think slower econ probably would make the game feel more dynamic from game to game, which I think is the thing we actually want. Is not like we don't want a decrease in variance. We actually want the variance to be acceptable for a larger period of time, right?
Yeah.
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 Because the variance right now is almost
Yeah,
too
that makes sense.
small in that, oh, after a certain number of turns, if my board state doesn't look exactly like this, I'm gonna lose. Short of my opponent making misplays, which, to be fair, basically most of the good corps. Well, the good corps right now have one of two strategies: win before the runner can smooth out that variance, or make a bunch of problems so the runner just does have to play perfectly. And like to some extent, maybe that was always the inevitable thing of corp, but I think it's there's we can try and design for a world where a third option exists there. So.
Middle game.
So yeah,
But yeah.
yeah.
And
I guess So your last question was, so what can we do to address that feeling in the game?
and
I
I
think
think
we've
you pretty
talked
much
about
addressed
that,
that.
but I wasn't safe if you had
Yeah.
any final thoughts you wanted to get back, because you're better than me at writing down your notes.
No, I think that we covered. I think we did a good job. I think we've solved everything.
Great.
We did it.
We did it.
All right. Thanks, Cold Lava. Any shout outs before
Thanks
you
for
head
having
out?
me. If you're in the area, come to Cambridge Megacities.
Cool. You gonna win the whole thing?
Probably not, but we'll
You have
try.
to believe in yourself if you're going to.
Right. I gotta learn from Rongi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Manifest the win.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for coming on. We'll see you
Yeah,
next
thanks for
week.
having me. Yeah, see you sometime in the future.
Well, I mean, I'll see you next week. Cool. So our next question is from the Robin, or take, I guess, is from the Robin, I should say. I thought a while back about Safer's claim that regards to simulation reset being the problem in combo PD. While I agree that that's true currently, I also think you could easily make a version with 2 neurospikes, salvo testing, and dupe stock grid to do the same thing of drawing all the cards you need and win from there. I think fundamentally drawing 20 cards in 2 clicks in a faction that gets 6 click gain cards will always invite finding some way to break the game. As such, I hope that the ban isn't going to be a reset, as I think that pushes the same problem down the line. Interested to hear your thoughts on it. I have plenty of thoughts on this, but you can start if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like making all of those changes makes the deck all of the suggested things are like significantly worse for the deck in a way that like it's sort of like, oh, it's so easy to do broken combo thing, just take out consistency pieces. Like that is almost always the thing with combo decks is either a card came out that breaks them completely wide open, or a set of cards, right? Or it's like the one thing went over the line, and then as long as that something, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, can bring it back below the line. I actually think combo decks are relatively easy to disrupt. So I guess I don't know if I would necessarily make simulation reset my target. I haven't looked at the combo PD decks enough. I also, to some extent, and this is the Jeff really shows his being a little tuned out of Netrunner butt here. Like, what happens if the runner installs a stone ship chart room? Like, are you consistently doing the damage
Yeah.
for that? I don't and the answer might be yeah, you are, and so I look like a fool. But I don't think it's I I struggle to see a world, and it's like maybe the deck is right now completely uninteractable, and runners can't possibly find enough tech pieces in the 5 to 6 turns they have. In which case, something needs to get done. But in that world, making the corp hitting a consistency tool like simulation reset and making them run an agenda they don't want to run in salvo testing, and a card that they don't want 2 of in their deck, they'd rather have 1 copy and then spend that influence on the card, saying, oh, I'll just replace a draw 5 with a second copy of my kill combo, to me is we're missing a key thing, is that draw 5 is the most important action for that thing to take. So
It's not draw 5. It's a 5 archive memory in one click. The most important
Yeah.
thing is that it is recurring 5 distinct pieces that you literally could have used on that turn, or that the runner meticulously like actually correctly targeted the pieces, and then instead of them being in the bin and you needing to find a way around it, you just get to pick back up where you left off. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think that like obviously that I mean this is something, there's a ban list that we're currently working on. I think we publicly say when when the ban lists are going to be active and coming out, and it's in line with the different seasons. So as the mega city is coming to an end,
Yeah.
that there's a ban list coming up, and obviously
Yeah.
this is a topic of conversation. So I've been thinking about. I mean, I've been spending a decent amount of mental energy actually thinking about PD and like what's going on here, and not just what does it mean for this particular case, but what does it mean for card games in general. Is it okay to have combo in the game? Why does this particular combo list seem to incite more emotional reactions than maybe like other combo lists have in the past? And I think that really what it comes down to is not that, hey, you are able to draw an insane number of cards or gain an insane number of credits with this list, and that's what breaks things. It's that it is able to interchange all of its resources to basically vibe out a solve. And that is what consistently allows it to kind of win the game. So the flood the market, sorry, not flood the market. Wow. Fully operational can be turned into credit, like fully operational draw through most of your deck can then be turned into credits from the draw using your digital life. Those credits can then be turned back into clicks using nano managements, and scoring out, using flood consistently will get you back clicks, and is just generally speaking very click efficient with exactly train and flood the market. So there's nothing particularly crazy going on here. Neurospike isn't even necessary for winning the game. You can score to 9 in this list just fine. It's just that Neurospike is another way of saving a click. So all of these cards, what they do fundamentally is draw your entire deck, find ways of exchanging some resources to other resources, and then having a critical mass of clicks to fast advance out your hand, right? What simulation reset what does in the deck, what its role is saying like, you cannot disrupt me. You can't have trashed all 3 of my wage workers and have it matter. You can't have trashed all 3 of my wage workers, the synchrocyclotron, um, Gourmand trashed a nano management. Like I just named 5 cards. If those 5 cards were in the bin and you don't have access to simulation reset, you're probably not winning the game. Or you're spending spin doctor shuffles getting those critical cards back in, instead of extending your combo by having a 0 like cards in R&D, shuffling exactly 2 cards back, and then top down solution to draw those 2 in a single action, and then install 2 things to further either fast advance out or create more servers, or put another probably not spin doctor on the table because it's going to draw you 2 more cards. But yeah, like there's a lot that this deck can do to deal with disruption, and simulation reset is kind of at the core of that. And I think that's the primary innovation of the list, that kind of takes it from like, this seems like it could be like pretty good, to like, nope, this is really hard to disrupt, and you have to be very specific in your play and your deck building to have a real game into the list.
Yeah, I think it's notable that like Simulation Reset is the most aggressively costed recursion card, I think, that NSG has printed, and like NSG also doesn't print that many core recursion cards. So like I think it is good to point out that like it is doing a lot of stuff, and like yeah, the runner's main mechanism of disrupting combos is trashing cards, and Simulation Reset solves that interaction point for the corp entirely for 1 credit and a click, which is a thing that the deck is already
Yeah.
looking to do a lot of. Um,
I don't
So-
remember who said it, where it came up, but someone was like, Simulation Reset is just 5 archives memories in a single click. That's what it does for the deck. And when you look at it that way, you're like, huh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny where it's like it is one of those cards where like, man, it'd be nice if we could just say this is faction locked, like and like then it would probably still end up being a problem. It could still end up being a problem eventually. Um
I
and like,
mean, look,
definitely
Simulation Reset, we're not losing anything if that card gets removed from the card pool.
yeah.
But like,
Yeah. It may not even be the right, like there might be other things to hit with the deck because, you
yep.
know, uh it's options. I don't even know it's necessarily this one. I think it's the other, like this deck probably was not possible before HB had a 5/3 that also gave them a click back. Like that is a big gain.
Yep.
But like that is taking that out is like so much collateral damage, and also I think that card has more use cases compared to a card like Simulation Reset, which really has just the one use case. And that's like, I don't know. I think there's we had this, like, I feel like we're having the same conversation we had when Magic Man happened again, where it's like we have to ban anything that makes like has combo potential. And it's like, honestly, the attacking a lot of combo decks in Netrunner, like attacking combo decks' ability to survive disruption is often the better angle, because it means that your opponent does have counterplay, your combo is more fragile, but we're not disrupting the underlying economy of the game collaterally by accident, I guess.
Yeah. And I should say that like this doesn't mean that we're banned. Simulation Reset is getting banned. It's just like that's how I view Simulation Reset within relation to the deck. There's still open questions that I have and that the team has about like what is the role of combo. Like I think I know what the output would be if we banned just Simulation Reset. Is that enough? Is the game going to be better off if the deck doesn't survive in any capacity? Is it going to be fine if the deck survives in some capacity, but to like what extent? Like these are some of the questions that will determine like what actually ends up on the ban list. So
Yeah.
Last question of the night.
Yeah.
Yeti with another controversial, actually this is probably not a controversial take, but a ban list take says that why are people talking about banning Snare? Exclamation point. 12 years after its initial release, a card that developers clearly concluded was so well designed that they didn't change a single number on it in elevation is suddenly seeing increased rates of play and feels more impactful than ever. Is it overrated or overhated? Do people need to just get good? Or is there something fundamental in which the card is being played in 2026 that changes things?
I have one small thing. It's been 14 years since Nero was released.
Get wrecked.
Get wrecked, Yeti. I mean, I feel like the answer to this is not very exciting. It is basically just that, and I think someone pointed this out even in general chat. I should go and find it. Like, Melia playing a single snare or a bite had a big downside in that it ate up hand slots as the corp. And one mode of Melius U is that it no longer does, right? It can just live in archives and you put it back in hand when it's relevant to do so. Which it does change how you evaluate a negative tempo card that hurts your opponent.
Yeah, I think like the thing is like Bite was seeing some like also does see play in like Alco occasionally in some numbers. And I think it's relevant there, like, and it makes sense there. So I do think that Bite is actually seeing more play than I think Snare traditionally did, but I think that again, context matters in card pools. It turns out that like Snare was probably a much better card for the first like 2 years of Netrunner than it was like as the game continued on. And so in a reduced card pool, like, yeah, the card can have more of an effect. But, one of the other things that's happening right now is, okay, Ashen isn't in the card pool. Ashen is Ashen was printed in some ways to just say like, hey, grinder, it's never going to come back. And currently you don't have Ashen. So I'm not calling Milius you grinder here. I'm just saying that like losing cards is more impactful when there's like not this invisible force that says like, hey, 1 or 2 archetypes is like running this card that says like, I don't care about losing some of these cards in my hand. Yeah, like I think the other part is like 4 credits is a pretty expensive effect. But when you're Milius U and you're just kind of turtling up and you're getting a lot of, like a credit a turn probably fairly consistently throughout the game, okay, you can just throw some more cash at snares and not have it hurt you like that much, in combination with, Empiricist, which is a card that people laughed at when it came out. And just Jinteki having like kind of a critical mass to create a Glacier archetype. Like, I think that I said all of this and I'm like, and the actual thing here is more than anything else is that your recurring bites and that they don't end. Let's be real. That's really the only issue.
Yeah, it is just the fact that, I mean, I think there was a lot of costs to running bite. Like, oh, I drew this card, and like I now need the runner to touch it for this card to have any text on it. Like that is a cost of that card intrinsically. But it's like, oh, okay, I get one of those. Like you would sometimes see those out of like Argus and like kill plans, because it was like such a big swing of tempo that was relevant to the deck. But with bite now, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not saying Melius use grinder, but having a grinder fallback plan, you're not going to turn that down if it comes for the cost of basically nothing, right? So I actually have to run. My daughter is sick and is screaming her head off, so I gotta go deal with a sad baby. But thank you, Safer. This has been a lot of fun as always. Thanks everyone for submitting their questions. You can go to the Discord to go and submit them, and submit some replay reviews for next week. And we will see you on the other side. Thanks everyone for listening, and say bye, Safer.
Bye, Safer. Bye, Jeff.